Conversations with Garmamie. I'm joined by Nicholas Castiglia. I slipped on his name. This guy is a local legend here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Anything to do with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, Muay Thai. You've heard of his name, Nicholas Castiglia. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. First and foremost, congratulations. You competed at the IBJJF's World Masters Jiu-Jitsu Championships. I believe it was this past weekend. And
yes.
And I want to hear all about that, and I want to hear about this really interesting story about how you essentially, during the lockdowns, you were training, you were focusing on your jiu-jitsu, you were focusing on your health, and you're looking very strong, and you're looking like you could probably power bomb Big Van Vader.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things going on earlier in the year, like there's some health issues within my family. Like one of my boys was getting a lot of tests done, and it made me paranoid, and I started getting a bunch of tests done. And in January, the doctor said, listen, like, you're too fat. Said your body fat is too high. Like, you need to work less, you need to stress less. Checked all my arteries, checked everything. He said, like, you're kind of in this spot where it's like you're at the fork almost, where you can continue on what you're doing, not be healthy, and be like a kind of healthy guy that like dies of a heart attack due to like just high stress levels. Like they did these what's the test? They did like cortisol tests on me and stuff like that. So, and I didn't really take it serious. I didn't at all.
How come? May I ask why?
I was more focused on my son. And his issues actually didn't get cleared up until later in the year. He's okay. He's all right. But there was some like serious tests going on. So like losing his hair and testing him for like A through Z of things that, no parent wishes they would ever have to think about, So we overcome that. We get through that. He starts on the mend, and, he has his things, he has his issues, but there's nothing that can't be overcome. And then in March, we open up a new gym in January. I call it like our dream gym. It's our headquarters gym, and it has a beautiful workout facility. It's got a ring. It's got everything we made a certain way on purpose, like to be the best in our opinion. Then COVID happens, and there was like, we poured so much money into this location. It just opened and we're shut down. It's already hard enough for businesses to last in the best of times. Okay, something happens, a catastrophe, a problem, an argument, like who knows, like, and it doesn't work out, and there begins to be problems. And then COVID happened, and I'm just like shaking my head and, looking at this brand new $50,000 workout area. Like, that's just the workout area, what it costs to put it in there. And I said to myself, I'm going to have to fight for my business. I know that. Okay. So we got to lead that. However, this is going to be stressful. I need to use this energy productively. And I train the whole time. I don't care. You want to judge me if COVID this, like I don't care. I don't care what you have to say, or somebody who's watching what you got to say. I train the whole time. I have like 20, 30 guys with me. that would show up, train every day. We train an hour, sometimes 2 hours. We train till nobody can train anymore. And I hired a strength and conditioning coach from Toronto who's a friend of mine. Her name's Janine McIver. This is my shout out because everybody asks, how did you change? And I say, this is the girl that gave me the plan that helped me change. So, yeah, my whole, kind of like touching on her a little bit, like I was kind of used to like the bro science, like cut carbs and deplete and get smaller and then balloon back up later. Like I'm sure you know, and you've lived through, doing this yourself, being like your background in the martial arts. Like that's like, I call it like the bro science. It's like what we all do to like cut to get small, like a heavy caloric deficit, light on carbs. And then, what I find is we become more athletic and we get to the weight, but we're a more depleted self of ours. And she said to me, she's like, listen, like, don't look at the scale. She's like, follow the diet as best as you can. Okay, follow the eating plan as best as you can. I'll give you a lot of alternatives. You can change in, out, follow your macros and all this stuff. And just worry about getting the workouts in, becoming strong and feeling good, and it was a super healthy approach for me, especially mentally, because it's like, oh, you start cutting sugar and then you're watching the scale, you're having anxiety about the scale. I just stopped worrying about the scale. I didn't even use the scale, use a mirror, like to see, how things work. So I noticed, as time went on, my like belt notches were going down. And that's what mattered, So I hire this girl. I hired Janine. She gives me the plan. I'm training with the guys, as much as my body will withhold for like 90 minutes a day, an hour a day, 90 minutes a day, and then doing my strength and conditioning 3 to 4 days a week. And I just really like immersed myself in jiu-jitsu. And I had done that since like I kind of been on our own. By on our own, I mean, since Mark and I had got our location in Barrhaven, I had already been doing that. I found like in my past, like earlier in my past, there's too much work and I kind of lost my like passion for doing what I originally started doing.
Wow.
And I just said it's time to like really return to that, because it all the good energy like comes from that,
I have two questions. Just if we could go back when you made that decision, Nick, to take all this energy and redirect it in a productive way, in a way where you're investing it in your development, in your training and so on. What do you think? What would have been the alternative? Quite frankly, like what would have happened to you? Because the way you're saying it sounds like it was it was a major decision, and it was a positive one. It was redirecting all the stressors, the anxieties as a business owner, as a leader in the community, and so on and so forth. What would have been the alternative had you not made that decision? If I can ask, I know it's possibly a personal one. You don't have to answer it if you don't want. I just curious to know.
Well, I think, and I think we can address this like we're talking about anybody, like there could have been the as is, stay as the as is, which is not working. Like I wasn't feeling good about myself. I wasn't mentally good. I wasn't physically good. I was, okay, I was like getting better at jiu-jitsu, but like not enough. Like I wasn't getting better good enough because I wasn't really taking care of myself. I wasn't making it that justified priority, And so the as is would have just been the as is. And then there's obviously the decline one, which we've seen a ton of people go on. For some people, it's food. For some people, it's alcohol. For some people, it's drugs. And
Mhm.
as we know, like no matter like which one you choose, like it's going to take you down that slippery slope one way or another, and all lead to similar, negative places. And I knew this, like I have enough life experience, not that I'm like super old or anything, but I have enough life experience to know that, like, okay, well, I can see where this is going to be headed, and I need to have a clear mind and a focused mind, a goal driven mind, because I'm an energy guy. I have lots of energy. So that is what I chose to do with it.
It's signs of, like, of maturity, and also, like, you're thinking big, you're thinking ahead, you're thinking about you. And as I mentioned, if you don't mind, as I mentioned before we started the interview, uh like, I remember when we used to interview you on with Capital Combat Parlay. Shout outs to Capital Combat Parlay, of course. When I remember, you were like the busiest person in the entire martial arts community. At least I got the impression that you were the busiest, because of so much that you used to do. And I know there was a team, behind you. Of course, I'm not taking anything away from your team and your fellow people, but I just remember thinking to myself, how does this guy manage to do so much, in addition to train, and and all that? And I guess where I'm going with this is, what has the last 9 to 10 months, what has it taught you in in terms of the bigger picture, in terms of your involvement with martial arts? What has it meant for you?
Um, I would say it's less about martial arts and just more about life in general. Because, like, here's the thing: you're like, yeah, you were the busiest guy. Like, I know. I've heard a lot of people say that. And even in
You were
2000.
all over the place. It was sorry to interrupt. It was incredible. It was like, it was almost like, it's as if you probably didn't sleep, and I don't know if you even had any work-life balance. It
Oh
was,
no,
you were
I
all
I, I didn't. And yeah, you're asking about like training. Like, how did you train? And I really didn't. Like, kind of did, but like not like now. So, probably since March, the life lessons. Um, there's a couple things kind of like leading to this. Like 2019, if you followed me in 2019, like Mark and I separated from like the other organization around, like, I think it was like 2018 or right beginning of 2019, it was announced. But Mark and I were kind of on our own on February 2018. This is a very, very difficult time. It was a very difficult time. Um, it took us like 10 months to really get that school going. And then 2019, like, I just absolutely like destroyed. Okay. However, there was a price. I was never home. I was like training, but it wasn't consistent. I was still training more than I was prior, but it wasn't consistent. I probably made more money that year than I made in the last like 3 years combined.
wow.
Okay. For perspective. But in the last month of the year, like, I was so messed up. Like, I was like canceling events. Like, if an event was starting to fall apart, I would just cancel it. I just, oh, it's canceled, which is fine. And in December, I took my family to Hawaii for a month, and that's when like a real like big change started to happen. And it was a slow, like, and again, like my son's health issues kind of like began to appear at that time. So like that's when a lot of these changes began, and then in January, February, March, and then that's how it all kind of started happening. But then from then on, kind of like the life lessons, like I get, one is obviously like spending a lot of time with your kids. you know, or making more time with your kids, because you can't get that time back, you know. So that was one of the major lessons from you know, this situation that we're going through right now. Another one was spending time working on yourself, which I have done since around 2018. I really had been working on myself, and I don't mean like lifting weights. I mean like, if I had broken pieces, like we all have, from different things in our life, address them, work on them, overcome them. If I had mindset issues, hire somebody to help you with those mindset issues. And I had, you know, like 2 personal coaches that guided me through, you know, some really tough times. And it's funny because all that lead up work led into this time. Okay. So it's like you're going like this, but every time you go down and you go up again, you're better. And then you go down and you come up better and stronger again. So it led me to this place here. So it's funny because like kind of when COVID came, I was like, man, this is, you know, this can't be like the last 16 years of my life. You know, how long is this going to be? Even if it was another 16 years, I'm used to working that hard anyways. Right. So I was just kind of like, now I'm going to take this time to continue the self work. But the self work was more about my health, my time with my children, and you know, the work on my own personal shortcomings. You know, I find a lot of things that like a lot of men have a hard time doing. It's like just, you know, looking in your own eyes and like knowing in your soul, you know, what you need to work on, and facing, you know, the man in the mirror.
It's interesting because we don't hear a lot about that within, I guess, combat sports. You know, it's whether you're competing at the highest level or you're just someone, you know, a recreationalist type. There's not a lot of that self-reflection and that inner work that you speak of openly. You know, and it takes a lot of. I think it takes a lot of courage to make those steps. And in addition to that, there's the layer of one's mental health that people that don't talk about within combat sports. In your opinion, now you've been doing this for what, almost 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Round up 18, 20 years, would you say?
Yeah, like I think I started martial arts when I was 10, but I only really started like professionally as a job. I think it was when I was like 18 or 19. So I'm in my like 19th or going on 20th year, something like that. I think it might be 20. I think it might be 20 years or just over 20 years.
And, you know, I know we're probably going to go all over the place, but it's all good. But in terms of this 2 decades of experience, it seems to me, from what little I know, you could probably like write multiple novels and you know, stories from what you've witnessed, what you've experienced, and so on. If we could travel back in time, I don't know if you're cool with doing this. If we were to travel back to, say, when you first started the business side of martial arts, let's go back 20 years ago. What would you say where were you at psychologically and so on?
I was a disaster. I didn't believe. I remember when my boss at the time, Pat, I remember when he came to talk to me about, he would be like, okay, we're going to get everybody to sign 12-month agreements. And I was like, I look at him dead in his face, be like, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. He actually had to pull me aside. From the guys, which was Mark and Hammer at the time, and like into his office. He's like, listen, dude, okay, I need you to believe.
Wow.
Even if you don't believe, I need you to believe. Wow. You know, and because like that's the only way we're going to make it. Like if you don't believe, like we're never going to be able to do it, you know, in these goals. And I was like, like I was a disaster teenager like anybody else was, but I was okay. I cared about him. I looked up to him. So when he spoke to me, I listened, and he's like pouring his heart out to me saying like, you know, we got to do this and I need your help, you know?
Mhm.
And for my friends, I would do anything, if they poured their heart out to me and said, hey, I need your help, I would do it, even if you don't believe,
Wow.
so that's where I was at, and the thing is though, and I call it, I have a coach who like has helped me through the last couple of years. We call it the pressure process, and all it really was reps in a pressured process. So as I saw myself achieving the reps of success of signing people up and achieving goals, and seeing the business side work, and using my creative ability to think of new and interesting things to do, it just gave me more confidence in it, right? And it gave me more belief in the business side of things. It gave me a more open mind to hear new knowledge from other people, because what we were doing wasn't working. And yeah, that's, so if you were to ask me to look back and how I was and who I was at the beginning, I was a disaster, arrogant, cocky, stubborn, unwilling to listen unless somebody really like poured their heart out to me, type of person,
I think, I'm listening to this and I obviously I'm believing what you're saying, but I think people tend to be their own worst critics, right? They're very hard on themselves and I'm hearing that in terms of, and I'm not judging, I'm just saying like, I think I remember you from way back then. And I didn't sense or see any of that. But then again, I didn't really know you that well. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
but I didn't, and even the lack of belief in that brand. I'm in a way. It's interesting to hear you say that now, because back then I didn't think there was any doubt there. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think most people would agree to that. But what's interesting is that all along you were always investing in your own personal development. It sounds right.
Yeah. Well, actually, um, like it's no secret, right? Like people know that me and Pat split. I'm sure most people know that me and him don't talk. So,
I didn't know, you guys didn't talk.
yeah,
And just so you know, like I'm not trying to.
yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine. Um, but like whether he believes it or not, or I don't know if he listens to all my interviews or not, but I say, certainly when there's good to be said about him, I say it, and something Pat was huge on in the early years was a lot of that self-development stuff, like Tony Robbins. He got me to study a lot of Tony Robbins stuff. He got me to study, a book by Zig Ziglar, got me to study some business books. And, those things began the onset of those changes at an early age,
It's really interesting because again, you don't tend to see a lot of that sort of. Uh, well, it's ironic because the martial arts are about personal development. They're about the mind, the body, the soul. At least some traditional martial arts, right? But nowadays, you don't hear much talk about that in some disciplines in sports. But it's interesting to hear that you are dabbling in that sort of personal development, because it's a win-win when it comes to business. And it's funny because as an outsider looking back, as a quasi historian, I'll say for that brand, you guys really did. You did something remarkable in terms of building the jiu-jitsu, at least the Brazilian jiu-jitsu sort of foothold in this city. And you know what I'm saying? I think it's a fair statement. I'm not trying to offend or annoy anybody when I say that. I think most people would agree, because the volume of people, I mean, you yourself, the volume of people you've trained over the years, from children to now they're adults, right? So you've inspired a lot in their development of jiu-jitsu and, competition and so on. But in the mix, would it be fair to say that you were so involved with just about every other aspects of the operation in terms of event management, running this, that, and the other, that you possibly didn't invest in your jiu-jitsu development until now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And looking back now, if I can ask, what would you tell yourself strictly in terms of your jiu-jitsu and your combat sports? Because I remember you back then, and you had a it's funny. I remember, anyways, I don't even want to go there because it's it's going to be a long discussion. But I remember there was a true fighting a fighter spirit in you. You know what I'm saying? Like you when you meet this guy, you can sense it's like, yeah, he's a natural born fighter. There's a quality about you that gives off that energy. It's not necessarily intimidating, but it's certainly, you have a presence about yourself. And back then, did you believe in that innate ability that you had?
Yeah. So I can just say it pretty plain and simple, why I stopped. I just didn't have the mental tools at the time in my toolbox, nor the knowledge, nor the guidance to understand my shortcomings properly, which was having a super difficult time in the competition arena. And I have no regrets on that. I have no regrets because it's led me to here, and I'm perfectly happy where I am right here. There's no regrets. However, that being said, it gave me a ton of experience on how to make better choices for my young fighters for competition, and how to help them overcome their shortcomings. I feel like through not having the understanding that I needed at the time, I learned what I needed to learn to help others overcome it, because I returned to jiu-jitsu competition close to when I was 30. So I think, I don't even know when I fought my last professional fight or whatever. It's kind of, I was fighting a tomato can anyways. But I was running the show the same night, so it's a little bit, that's another story we'll save for another time.
It's insane when you think about it. It's insane. Imagine the promoter, the person who's putting on the event is also fighting in it. It's like you're wearing multiple hats. But sorry, please continue. I don't.
Yeah. So I didn't have the, it's like a mental case. It's like a competition mental case, disaster, and didn't have the tools to kind of sort through that at my age. So I fell more into the business role at the gym. Mark became the Muay Thai guy, Hammer was the jiu-jitsu guy. And that's kind of what happened in that area. But it's funny because when I started competing again in jiu-jitsu, I was 30. I was 30. I was the fattest I'd ever been. I was the most out of shape I'd ever been. Okay, it's the biggest I'd ever been. And I was kind of training, I was sort of training. And I started competing and I just started winning. And I think it was the maturity. I think I found the tools that I needed through coaching other fighters, through MMA, through Muay Thai. Jiu-jitsu, I wasn't the main coach. I'd be there, to help guys out, but I was not the main guy doing that. But I think I built and learned some of the tools through that time, so that when I came back, I just entered with a completely different mindset. All of a sudden, the guy who couldn't win his weight could win his weight at the heaviest weight, to win the absolute and fight this many matches in a day and do it over and over again, you know? And then from purple to black, it was like, I don't know, like I would always podium. Like I would always, you know, like I can't even remember like getting eliminated really like first round. Like if you were to ask me, like I don't remember. I don't remember. I don't even know if it happened, you know? So, and that's not to say like I'm some crazy extravagant grappler. Like I'm not. Very simple style, very basic style, and that style remained the same. I just, you focus on tightening up your basics in your game and what you need to do and what you're trying to do. And yeah, that was kind of like my return, and that mentality when I returned was very eye-opening for me, and was again, yet another stage of learning, to help coach others.
Now, if you were right now writing a book in terms of your journey, what chapter would you be on right now? Well, what's the title of this chapter?
The chapter that I'm on right now, I would say like, title of the chapter. I don't know.
Maybe, sorry, I know it's a tough question, but
maybe like The Warrior Returns.
That's okay. That's interesting. No? So there's a revival of the warrior spirit in you, and I mean it took a pandemic in a way to kind of come and make you pivot to retrain and refocus your mind, and right now in this chapter of your jiu-jitsu journey, of your martial arts journey, where you at now, you mentioned that you're content and happy with. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years as far as competition? I do want to talk about the World Masters. You were there, you competed, but where do you see yourself going? Because a few people have said that you're in the best shape of your life. It looks like it. You know what I mean? Like you're obviously training very hard. But where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Because you're still young, and you potentially have, I think you're in your you're in your mid to late 30s. You probably have another decade plus of competition, at least in pure jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. So like, okay, so I'm going to answer this question. I'm just going to say what I need to say first. So like when I say like warrior, I like to use the word warrior instead of fighter. I find like fighters have a shelf life. I feel like you can be a warrior forever. Like it's always in you, and it's kind of like you said, like as you had like noticed about me or whatever, that like kind of presence that I had. Okay. And I feel that that's what that is. Okay. The willingness. Now for a part of my life, I was kind of shifted into a role where my personality helped with the success of a different area in martial arts, the business. And I felt like I like suppressed that part of me, and guys who train know this. They know that like that fire that like burns inside you, to train. And when a new spark hits it, it's like it almost like engulfs you again, and you have to be careful because the fires that burn bright burn fast, right? So you got to make sure they don't burn out. You have to keep on feeding it, properly, and make sure it's growing at the right level, So like, as all these things kept on happening, like you just keep on having this thing inside you telling you to go back, telling you to get back to your, to your roots of what you love doing. And why did I start this? Did I just start this just to make money? Like I did that in 2019. I made crazy money in 2019, but I wasn't happy.
Wow.
Wow. I made so much money that I could take my family to Hawaii for a month. I wasn't happy. Wow. And I got to train with some like crazy high level guys in Hawaii, Otavio Souza, the boogeyman, Richie Martinez. And I just like, part of me just said like, I want to be like those guys, you know. I'm friends with Roberto Abru, Cyborg.
Wow.
You know, we brought him up here, and like he is such an inspiration of like, you can do this, you know. And like I had all these guys as examples in my life who were a little bit older and are still doing it. And I just like, it was just like calling inside of my heart to like, you know what, like now it's time, you know, to get back to actually why you started this, because it's not the money, it's a fulfillment. And like in turn, I actually ran a better business through doing that, because people would see me on the mats with them, working with them, sweating with them, grinding with them, putting my heart in it with them, instilling the culture of like, you know, love, friendship, everybody has a place, jiu-jitsu for everyone, as Gracie Barra says. You know, the life lessons and how they translate from the mat into the person, you know, and how we take that strength and that power from the mat, we bring it into the rest of our lives. And it was almost like as I began to invest more in myself, it made everything else better, ironically.
So it was almost as if you found the balance essentially to the formula.
That's right.
Right.
But who knew? You had to focus on you. You know, you hear people say that stuff all the time. You know, you got to focus on yourself, or, you know, the new age people like, yeah, love yourself, man. You know, well, warriors, it doesn't really resonate with them as much, you know, where it's like the warrior doesn't, you know, knows he needs to be a warrior, but like, how do I do that in this society? You know, how do I invest in that? Well, I train wrestling twice a week. You know, I have my 90-minute training sessions, you know, 5 days a week. I have my 4 strength and conditioning sessions, you know, 4 days a week. And then I have my private lessons. I have 2 types of privates. So I have the privates where I train, and then I have the privates where I train with the people I'm teaching, you know. So, and it all works together in that system. And I found that it is all those pieces that like brought me back into it.
That's remarkable, man, and it's outstanding. And congratulations to you for finding that formula and for making it work. It's funny, on the flip side, I must say that, you know, you with the business side, understand, you know, all that experience you've gained on the business side is the equivalent of like an executive MBA, you know, in terms of real-time application as a business owner. And I think a lot of martial artists who happen to be entrepreneurs, of course, you know, they run a business and they might be outstanding teachers, but they might not understand the full scope of the business side of martial arts. I think people struggle with understanding the business side. And for you, I think you have an advantage because for X amount of years, you were essentially, you know, immersed on the operational side and the you know, the business side of things, which a lot of people struggle with. What other sort of ventures do you think you could explore with all the knowledge that you've gained over the years, with that wealth of experience in terms of knowing the business side of martial arts? What other sort of side businesses would you explore as a leader in the community? Well, what other side businesses would you explore? I know we're kind of deviating a little bit from the original topic.
Like, and you're saying like, are we staying within martial arts, or are you just asking me in general?
A combination of both, because a lot of what you gained is transferable to so many other businesses, right? You did events management, you did a lot of marketing and communication, right? In terms of promotion, you did a lot of negotiate, you negotiated a lot of deals and so on. I think it's weird because in the martial arts community, there's a lot of professionalism, but people don't name it that. You know what I'm saying? They just say, hey, can you go put on a show? Well, that's a skill. That's called event management. You know,
Yeah.
there's a whole science to it, and you guys have a lot of that professionalism. And I'm just curious to know what other side business would you or are considering dabbling into with this experience?
Well, I still, like I still do the events, just everything's been shut down.
Right.
So like Mark and I got a bunch of events planned, and like I got a whole like map. By map I mean massive action plan. Okay, like I got a whole map of you know what's going to happen when I get going again and hit the ground running. So in terms of events, like you name it, grab, I got Fred, just from my contacts and work throughout the years, like I have no shortage of people when we turn back on. Like I literally have a list of people just waiting for us to just go crush it again. And I'm very blessed for that. I'm very fortunate for that. Much of it's going to be based in Ottawa, and there's a lot of it that's based throughout Ontario and probably branching into the United States when it returns. So there's that's going to be happening. I have a consulting company that I'm pretty quiet about. It's called Legacy. And I called it Legacy because I'm trying to help build other people's legacy and the legacy that they leave behind, because I really believe like the martial arts influence leaves a whole legacy into a community of helping people, being community leaders, making a difference, making the weak strong. Like there's so many benefits. It's certainly not the cure all for everything, but I have never seen something that does as much good as that. I have about 10 gyms ranging from the United States to across Canada that are with me. And I'm actually working on a lot of, I have like a back end website where like there's video courses and there's teachable courses that I have on there for them. That I have been ramping up recently, again, because of the lockdown and stuff like that. And, that's some fulfilling work, for me. Then I do private lessons as well. Even though like private lessons are kind of like lower on the pay scale in comparison to like something like consulting or the events, they are probably the most fulfilling. And that's why I do so many. Like I teach on average anywhere from like 20 to 25 people a week privately.
Wow.
And anywhere from a half hour to an hour a lesson. Okay. And I just take a great deal of fulfillment in spending time with these people and seeing them grow. So above and beyond that, and like having more gyms, like I don't think I really need to do too much more, right? Because that keeps you pretty busy. Like there are I have a like a business that's totally not martial arts that I pulled off like not last year but the year before. Actually I created it for my kids. And all the martial arts guys now want to hold this event in their city. It was a bouncy castle festival in Ottawa, and people were like laughing at me, like when I like told the idea, and even the guys we rented the castles from were kind of like laughing at me, like you're never going to be able to pull this off. Nobody's pulled it off, and blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, whatever, like I don't, I'm used to people saying I can't do stuff, and then the day of, you have 9,000 people show up.
Wow.
And you're losing your mind because like you don't have the space or the amount, or like we only pre-sold 1,500 tickets, so like in the last like 24 hours of like online, like it doubled to 3,000. Like we had to shut it down. And that means we had like 6,000 people show up at the door, which is like, in my experience, I have never ever had that happen in my life. It was a blessing and a curse. A lot of people were pissed. A lot of people were happy. And it was an amazing experience, and you know what, like I don't know like how you grew up in the city. Like my parents didn't have a lot of money, but they did it. We weren't poor, but it's like I come from a family of 3 kids. Like there wasn't a lot of like super cool things you could bring your 3 kids to for like $10 a person, that was like cool for a young kid. And the whole point of me holding it, I'm a sucker for like, love and helping people and all that type of thing. And the whole reason for like me doing it is I wanted to have an event that was cool for kids and didn't cost a lot of money. Like it didn't gouge the people. So I'm like $10 a person, everybody who comes in, that's it. And when it got crazy in there, bro, I sent the guys to go get pallets of water, and I was just giving out free waters, free pizzas. I must have ordered 100 pizzas because I was just like walking around. Hey, if I saw kids crying, bro, I would go give them free cotton candy. Like it was crazy, man. And my in the MMA industry, you go through some like intense times. Like I'm like, I'm not gonna lie here. Like I've punched out guys, like coaches, vagrants starting fights with us in the, like I have gotten in physical altercations during some of these shows. So when my girl, who's like my operations management girl, is like losing her mind at the event, there's too many people, I'm like, we got this. I have been through worse. We got this.
Did you punch anyone out?
No, nobody in that one. I couldn't have that at that event. It's more acceptable at the MMA event. You know what I mean?
Of course.
But really cool. there was definitely some intense conversations of people freaking out of how many people were there, but nothing of that nature.
That's incredible, man. That's interesting. The Bouncy Castle Festival. I'm hoping to hear more of that once this COVID thing passes by. Now, Nick, let's talk about the World Masters. Tell us about your experience there. How was it? What was it like to be on the mats, fighting and competing? And what was the vibe like in the space?
Well, first I just want to say I didn't start with training to plan for that because World's Masters was announced late. It was announced, I think, in November. I think it was the beginning of November.
Wow. Okay.
So, but I had been training so hard up until that point, like to ramp it right up for another like 7 weeks. I was like, perfect. And Mark originally was going to go with me, but he had some stuff come up and he couldn't come. And I keep on training super hard. Like first training day, break one of my fingers. I've been training last 2 years with hernia. I have a hernia. Wow. That I'm just refusing to get fixed until it's like absolutely like I need to address it. I sustained a knee injury, I sustained a shin injury. Like it was just like, it was not an easy road to get there. But again, Janine, my strength and conditioning coach, got my conditioning through the roof. The program shifted to be less about strength, more about the conditioning, and the program stayed the same. I would train 3 to 4 hard days a week of jiu-jitsu, do my privates with Cameron, do my other privates with all my other students, which I was also drilling, train sometimes at night. So sometimes I get 2 a days, sometimes it'd be 3 a days with the strength and conditioning. And it was like an amazing lead up. So when it comes to World's Masters, like you got to remember, nobody's competed. Like I think the last time I competed was like London the year prior, the London Open, when I did the brown black belt absolute division, which I won. So it was like 13 or 14 months prior, and I was like kind of like nervous that it had been that long for me. But when I had got to Florida, I arrived on Monday and I went to Gracie Barra Ottawa, and they have a ton of great guys. And I trained with those guys the first night, and jet lag, all these issues, everything. They just absolutely crushed me, like destroyed me. Like I was exhausted, but I knew I needed that first day in, and thank God I was as fit as I was, because I could take the beating, go home, and like be okay the next day.
Mhm.
So I picked up my friends the next day, Igor and Janine. Janine, who's my fitness coach, who happened to be coming with her husband. So it's like everything worked out. They ended up staying with me. And I trained the second night, and I just felt like fire, bro. I felt amazing. I felt great. I felt like everything was coming together. I had Professor Khalifa from Gracie Barra, Alabama, who knew who Bruno was, the guy I was going against, the legend, Bruno Bastos, who I was going against. And he really helped me, tweak a couple things in my game, to get ready for that. I also want to give a shout out to Igor Radzik. He's a Russian from Primal MMA. We call him the Russian. And he actually he came down to spend 2 whole days with me, like 2 weeks before I left, to help me get ready, because he's an ultra heavy who has competed a lot and competed at the Worlds and all these things. And all these like things kind of like led to the day. And the first day you go there and you're walking in, and the energy, was great, but it wasn't the same because of COVID, and it's like all of us are like sneaking in, because you kind of have to like sneak in to get in when you're not competing. You're like standing outside like, hey, you got a coach, you got a coach, you got a coach. Can you bring me in as your coach? Because everybody was allowed to bring in somebody as their coach. So like there was like a very different vibe. Like I've been to Pans, I've been to Worlds. Like the energy was like 10 times greater at the regular Worlds, like a year ago.
Mhm.
But it was still an amazing vibe, and everybody who was there, you could tell, was just grateful to be there. Like anybody who was on the floor, it was like almost like immense gratitude to be here in the moment, competing, doing what we love, after everybody obviously, just suffering such a tough year, no matter where they were. So in terms of energy, like that's definitely what the energy felt like when I was there.
And as far as the competition itself, how did it go for you? What was the experience like, and what are some of the lessons learned as far as the competitions, and how has it changed your game, and what do you plan on working on, to improve?
You know what? Like I actually learned a lot from my opponent. Not only in our match, but I watched all his other matches as well.
Okay.
And he played the game so smart, like
How so? How so?
so like for instance, because I talked to him after our match, I said, hey, because like if you look up his name, Bruno Bastos, like he's been competing forever, he's been around forever, he's won like everything ever, like he was a part of jiu-jitsu when the greats were in jiu-jitsu, like Harder Gracie, Sandra Ribeiro, Cyborg, like just to name a few guys, Marcelo Garcia, like he's a part of that era.
Right.
Okay. So he's kind of a big deal, right?
Mhm.
So like when I had went against him, Professor Khalifa kind of gave me a plan, and I try to execute that plan, and it was trying to defend the grip fighting, and I was trying to get my one grip to get in for the takedown that I've been working. And I had 2 or 3 interchangeable takedowns.
Can I ask which ones, which takedowns you work on?
So one was a same side collar grip to an outside single on my knees.
Okay.
Okay. And then I would have the ability to take down from my knees, stand up with the leg, or I would go same side grip, foot sweep, shoulder snap down. And there was another one, I forget the name of it right now. Mark says it to me all the time, but it's like an outside, like wrap the leg around the outside. his leg and kind of like bring him down with you. It's a cross between like a judo throw and a Russian throw where I wrap under the far leg, and they all kind of like tie together as in interchangeable. But the problem I was having was that when he would grab me, like I couldn't break his grip. Like I posted a video. If you watch in the video,
that.
I snap him down. Yeah. If you like freeze on the snap down, most people let go, put your hands down. Yeah. He went like this on the ground and pops back up. I'm like, gee. So that's why I would keep on pushing him out of bounds, because once he established his grips, it was very hard for me to do anything. Okay. So I would push him out of bounds, get the reset so I could start again to at least have the attempt to get my grip again. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So he hit me with a takedown on, moving to the outside. I think the point call was very fast, and I turned over right to my knees right away, and the throw was out of bounds. So really, it should have been advantage. In my opinion, he still would have won. But I think the point call was very fast, because it's like as soon as he threw me, you got the points. When it's like doesn't work like that, like you got to secure, me on the ground to get those points. You usually wait a few seconds, and I was out of bounds, and I landed on my knees. So, but nonetheless, like I couldn't really do anything to him, anyways. Like I couldn't do anything to him, but I was trying. I was fighting viciously from the beginning right to the end. And, when I had watched him in his other matches, he was so methodical. Like he would play the game, bro. Like if the guy pulled guard, he would get to half guard, begin working for the pass, get the advantage, show that he was working. Bro, that was a match. That was a match. And he would just like sit there. And so I saw that in one match, and then another match, another guy pulled guard, and he had a hard time getting past, but he would attack the neck. He would attack the neck from inside the guy's guard, and then continue to work past. So he was always working, and he won that match as well. And so those were his 3 matches that took him to the final. And with Cyborg, what happened with Cyborg? Cyborg, he went for the shoulder throw on Cyborg. Cyborg saw it coming, then it went out of bounds. I think he got an advantage from that. I think it was like tied, like advantage. I don't remember, so don't quote me exactly on it. And then he like pulled to half guard in the end, because they both got penalties. Okay, so he pulled to half guard in the end. And that shows like he's like trying to work, like he's doing the work. He's doing the, trying to take the offensive, trying to make it be something instead of stall. And he was so stoic the whole time. He was so calm the whole time. He knew what he exactly needed to do to win each of these matches. And like, that was a massive learning point for me watching it.
Wow. So I guess it's fair to say that you're going to implement that sort of approach as far as, in your future competitions. It's something to consider as far as.
I would say like at the IBJJF level, like I would say for myself, like, how you're talking about like the 5-year goal, like, what's the plan? I would say do as many like IBJJF as I can, because I feel that at that level, like that's what it is, like, of course you're not going to face a Bruno Bastos every time or a Cyborg every time. But I feel like at that level, it's so much more competitive, where like the game is played that way. Not to say, I'm not hating in Ontario. Ontario's got like a ton of good grapplers, but I've never had to play that tight a game in Ontario before.
Yeah, I guess it's the elite level, right? Everyone is amazing on the mat. So at the end, it's really refining it to a very specific approach. And I mean, it's interesting to hear that. As far as the grip fighting, would you say that this guy, like, was he that hard to break the grip, or is it a matter of just maybe working on a different gripping strategy? Like, in terms of, like maybe cross training in other styles as far as,
Yeah, like a big thing like I took away from it for
Mhm.
sure
Mhm.
is like I have been training judo already, but like not as serious as I need to be. And like I've been training wrestling. Like if you're like, what do I train more? I train wrestling with like a kind of like judo style gripping, you know. So what I'm going to be moving towards is I'm going to continue my wrestling training because it's going amazing and I actually love wrestling. And um, however, I am going to be training. I do want to add in, God knows when we can, but like I want to add in strict judo training, just judo training, just adding in that into the development of the game.
Yeah, because it's interesting. A lot of those high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitors, they have a solid judo background, because, and people don't realize that in Brazil, judo, like they have something like 2 million people who are signed up for judo in Brazil in terms of active members in the judo community. So Brazil is a huge powerhouse of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in addition to judo. And it's interesting to hear this about the, you're planning as well to train in judo. I know that Mark is obviously involved in that. I think it's awesome. Overall, speak about the social aspect of the World Masters. It was an opportunity to see your fellow members of the community there. Well, what did that mean for you, considering all of this, this pandemic and all that?
The social aspect, well, like, I was there with Igor and Janine. Kevin Wheeler was there. Fernando Zulik was there. Joel Gerson was there. Another girl from Gringos, called, her name's Aisha, was there. In terms of Canadians, who else is there? Oh, Rodrigo Mendana from Montreal was there. I don't know of a whole lot of other Canadians that went. Um, the social aspect of the Canadians was always very good. It always is very good. Generally, like Canadians are there to support each other regardless of team, and a lot of kind words, a lot of support. And I think, like it just comes back down to, like we were using the word before, like warrior, like I think all the people that were there are warriors, because we don't like, there's a pandemic going on and we're here to fight. It doesn't matter what's going on. We're here to do what we do. And I think that's like, kind of like the meaning of the word, like it doesn't really matter what's going on because that's who we are.
It's incredible. There's a global pandemic going on, and you guys are out there, having fun, competing in jiu-jitsu. It's remarkable. I'm going to ask you one last question because it's almost 11 o'clock, and I appreciate your time here. This has been a really interesting conversation. What are your plans for 2021 in terms of competition and training and all that?
Competing, I would like to do more. It's funny you're asking me that because I was looking for the 2021 IBJJF schedule, that hasn't been released yet. So yeah, I would like to compete more. I would like to continue to do tournament competition in the gi. I would like to continue to develop my throwing ability and keep on building my BJJ acumen. I've actually been working on my guard for a long time too. In the absolute division, if I'm against somebody smaller, I usually pull guard, which a lot of people don't see from big guys, and nor do the little guys expect. So I usually have the upper hand of surprise for the first 10 seconds. They're like, "What's going on here?"
Right.
Who's this big guy throwing himself at me here? So
why is there a reason why you do that? Can you explain your reasoning for
because I'm so confident in my escaping ability
okay.
that like if they pass, like I believe I can get to my knees or roll them over fairly quickly.
Okay.
And then I'm just so confident in that, like I'm not worried about getting up. Even Bruno Bastos was on my back, and I was able to get up extremely quick. Like he was on my back when we reset, and he couldn't hold me. Like I was up, boom, ran, turned right into him right away, you know. And so I'm very confident in that, and I think. And also too, the guys are smaller, so they're easier for me to move around, right? So that's why I do that, and I do it also for my guard development because I want to battle test my my guard.
Actually, one last question: how important is it for black belts to be competing, in your opinion? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a personal choice. I'm not one of these guys who's like everybody must compete or every black belt must compete or your instructor doesn't know jiu-jitsu if he doesn't compete. Like I don't really believe in that, or I don't believe in that at all. Because like look at John Danaher, for example, amazing instructor.
Right.
Like he's like I don't even know if he's ever competed. Maybe he did compete. Like I don't know.
I don't think he has. No.
So I don't think it's necessary. However, one thing I can tell you, and it is something you did say, where it's like all these people are like reaching out or like appreciate or like a leader. Like I didn't even take that into consideration going. Like I was going for myself. I was going for myself. It was my own journey, my personal journey. But I couldn't believe after I competed, like Garmamie, like I spent a whole day answering messages, like one whole day after I had competed and like posted my little write up and my like little clip of my, 10 seconds where I did okay against Bruno, and it was literally like one whole day of answering people, saying thank you, private messages, other gym owners, other black belts in the city, other black belts like from all over Canada, just, sharing their like, hey, you really inspired me to compete next year, or I'm going to come with you next year, or almost a bunch of my teammates being like, like, bro, I want to be with you next year. Like seeing you out there and like seeing you do it, like made me want to be there too. So I don't think the instructor needs to do that. But what I can say is that I had no idea of the impact it was going to have to like my team and my students. And like, I'm like, hey guys, like I lost, like I lost. There's not really a whole lot to, for me, I'm very black and white in that way. Like I didn't win a medal. I didn't win a match, people are like, oh, you fought a legend, this and that. But like, look at how fit you are now. Look how strong you are now. You look great out there and stuff like that. Or you're out there laying it on the line, And these are things I never took into consideration. Really, as a competitor, you focus on winning, right? And you don't really think about these other things.
Well, it's interesting because they're seeing the fact that, hey, here's this guy who's invested so much in so many other people and their personal and professional development as martial artists, recreational competitors, and here he is taking that step in competition and showing personal, leadership and belief in oneself. So I think it's a big, it's a big vote of confidence, man, and it's great to see that you're competing and you're representing and you're doing it for you, man. After doing so much for everybody else, I think it's fair to do something for oneself. I want to thank you very much for this interview. It's been very, very interesting. And I want to wish you happy, Merry Christmas, of course, and happy 2021. I think we're all looking forward to waving bye-bye to 2020 because it's been a unforgettable year.
The only thought, like anybody who's listening, that I would want to leave them with is this. In the last 3 years, I have like reinvented myself like 3 times. And the most recent one was the one since March of physically, mentally, and through my training. It is you are 9 or 10 months away from being exactly who you want to be. and anybody who's listening, you're going through a hard time, you're having a difficult go, the COVID's got you down, you've had your roller coaster. Like we've all been there, but make a plan and just know that in 10 months or 12 months, like you can change your life if you want to, because I did. So that's my Papa Nick life lesson, Wonder Years special to leave everybody off with.